Another fellow I would classify as the epitome of an NHLer is Nick Libett. Nick unfortunately came up with the Wings while they were going through some pretty tough times, coaching changes and dissension. Another fellow I would classify as the epitome of an NHLer is Nick Libett. Nick unfortunately came up with the Wings while they were going through some pretty tough times, coaching changes and dissension, all around chaos really, but Nick was one of those guys who just kind of shrugged it off as best he could and went out and played his game. He was a fixture going up and down that left side as solid as anybody in the game, and a classic example of the two-way player, a good shot, an ability to score goals, but someone the opposition could take no liberties with. I only wish for his sake that Nick Libett's timing had been a little better and he could have added his talents to the teams of today.
Nicholas, you played 12 years in Detroit. You had some fine teams, okay? But you never won a Stanley Cup. I don't think you got really close. What was that like when you look at this team here, the current team winning 2 straight cups, and you guys, you just couldn't make it?
Well, the one year, and I've told many people this, that we had 96 points the one year. We had just made a trade with Toronto a year or two earlier, and had a good blend of youth, veterans. Myself being one of the younger guys, and then for whatever reason, and I to this day I don't know the answer. We made a coaching change, and Ned Harkness came in from Cornell, and that was the beginning of the end for the franchise for a great number of years during the 70s. Basically traded every person on that team, with myself being the exception, and to this day I don't understand why I either stayed or didn't go, whatever way you want to put it. But that was the beginning of the end, and that was a big hole to try to climb out of.
You say you played 12 years. I counted 10 different coaches in those 12 years, and there were 12 coaching changes. Wasn't that a chaotic situation? It had to be crazy. I mean, you had to change system after system, and how could you ever get used to playing for a coach?
Jerry, you couldn't because when I first came here, Sid was coaching, and it was good. Sid just kind of opened the door. Our system was, probably score more goals than the other team because we had that kind of talent. You're right. Then when all the coaching changes, it's very difficult because there's no continuity. You don't know from one year to the next who the coach is going to be, or even during the year. And the one year that Ned came in, I might be getting ahead of myself here, but we had a petition signed to get rid of him. Eagleson came in from Buffalo, or we were playing in Buffalo, came in from Toronto, and the compromise was that Ned had become general manager, and I forget who took over. It might have been Billy Day or Doug Barkley or somebody, but we basically had a petition to get rid of Ned Harkness. I mean, out of the organization. And we all signed it, and we had a few withdrawals towards the end, and that's kind of killed it.
Well, it's players' revolt, really, and I don't think I've ever seen this printed anywhere. Who spearheaded this, first of all?
Well, I think going back, I think it was Big Frank Mahavlich was. He was so full of the way things were happening after having a very successful year team-wise the year before. And the year that Ned came in and just tore the franchise apart, and it was a accumulation of Big Frank and maybe even Alex, and Stemkowski was still there, and all of the current team from the year before team was still there, and we just had it because of the rules. Haircuts, for example, you had to have your hair a certain length, and that was the early 70s. Things were a little different then. You didn't have really short hair. It was a little longer type of attitude. No cigar smoking. I never smoked cigars, but you couldn't smoke cigars in hotel lobbies and that type of thing. And I don't even know if this has ever been exposed before. But Eagleson came in. We met, and we basically, it was a players' revolt. It never, it was fire the coach is what it amounted to.
Alan Eagleson was the players' rep. He ran the players' union, I guess it's called. And did one of the Red Wings players, disgruntled players, obviously, go to Eagleson, or did Eagleson start the movement?
No, I believe we approached him, and when I say we as a team, and I don't know what one person did it, but we approached him, and like I say, the compromise was to move Ned out of coaching into the general manager's job. In hindsight, that wasn't the right thing to do. Move him out. We wanted to get Ned out. It just was so. If that had happened, I really believe that team would have rebounded and not had the 8 or 7 or 8 or 6, 7 years of just devastation here that we had.
Nick, does this, well, I'm surprised at this too, but does this start like in a bar after the game and you guys are unhappy and you talk and then it spreads around the dressing room? Because as Jerry said, this is brand new stuff.
Yeah, well, Joe, it's like a long time ago. It's 25 or so years ago, or 27 years. But, I just think the team started out poorly that year. And then with all the silly regulations and rules, tell
me why he was so different. We knew he was different, but you're touching on stuff that's just dynamite, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't know. He didn't treat us. He treated us more like college kids than men, I guess is what I'm saying. With Peter Stemkowski, Peter was a little bit of a free spirit. Gary Unger was a young free spirit. Very good hockey players, both of them. But he sent Gary Unger. He sent Peter Stemkowski to the barbershop. I think 3 times in one day up in training camp in Port Huron to get a haircut. First time, came back, it wasn't cut short enough. Sent him back again, too long, and sent him back again, too long again. I mean, and you're 23 or 4 or 5 years old at the time, Peter is, and he's going, what's going on here? And it just, and things like that, they just build up, and finally it came to the point that we just said, you have to go.
He just was not attuned to coaching in the NHL. He was a college guy. He came out of Cornell, he'd been at RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute, and he just did not know how to handle Canadian professional hockey players, who are, to my mind, are the best athletes in the world to cover. I think Joe will agree with this. Between us, we have about a century of sports writing. I think we both agree that the hockey players are the best to relate to and talk to. But anyway, this was darkness with Harkness. That became the motto right away.
Tactically, what was Harkness like running a game?
we used to we'd sit in our hotel rooms on the road, for example, and it was a big thing. He'd go into his pocket and bring out a pocket full of change, and he'd throw the coins on the bed, and we'd all be in the room. We had our team meetings in a normal room with double beds. That's where we had our team meetings. In those days, we didn't have it at the rink or in some big suite. And Ned would get on the bed and he'd say, "Okay, quarter, here you are, here you are, here you are. Puck goes from here to here to here into the net." And we say, "Ned, but we're on a bed here. You got to be able to skate faster than the puck." He just tactically, he was a great theory guy. I mean, he had it all worked out as to what should happen, but the only trouble is we couldn't execute it because, first of all, we didn't have the talent with all the trades he had made, and secondly, he forgot about the other team out there occasionally. You can pass from here to here, but there's an interruption factor.
Well, since he was a collegiate coach, was a rah-rah thing about him? Was he a talker in the dressing room? What kind of meetings did you guys have?
He was a rah-rah guy. He was a talker. He was emotional. I mean, it wasn't that he didn't. He really felt he was doing the right thing. He was emotional. I mean, he wasn't a bad person. He just was a bad National Hockey League coach. That's it in a nutshell. He did try to rah-rah, and rah-rah wasn't the right way to go with us.
Wasn't the front office a bit screwy at that time? There was a guy named Jim Bishop who was a lacrosse coach who came in and sort of was above Harkness, and he had an awful lot of influence also. And what was he like? Yeah,
Jimmy Bishop was, I think, from Oshawa or Peterborough in that area, and he was a lacrosse guy. Somehow he got Bruce's ear, I believe, in the early days, and Harkness and him had a connection through lacrosse. He wasn't general manager, but he probably had more power than the general manager because he had a pipeline right to Bruce, and didn't see him much. Probably had a lot more power than we at the time thought he had. It was supposed to be an inspirational type of guy as opposed to a hands-on guy. He'd come in and give you a speech every 4 to 6 weeks, and that was supposed to rev you up, but it just sent us kind of the other way, to be honest with you.
Then you had Ted Garvin a couple of years later. He was another beauty. He lasted 10 games or less, and he vanished near the end of one game. We got rumors in the press box that he was going to be fired. We looked down at the end of the game, he was gone. There was no coach the last 10 seconds of the game. What was he like? Because that actually changed things. Alex Del Vecchio became coach then, and you replaced Alex as team captain.
Well, Teddy Garvin, another guy, and I get back to Harkness and Garvin. They weren't bad people at heart, but they were out of their element. Teddy Garvin coached successfully in the International League for many years. Toledo, had championships, and he lasted 10 games. And there's an example I can use about coaching strategies. We're playing Boston in Detroit, and we had our team meeting, and Bobby Orr was a left-hand shot, but always played the right point, and that was obviously his strength. And his strategy was for us to say, well, keep Bobby off the boards. Well, meaning that let Bobby go into the center, and if you think about it, being a left-hand shot, playing the right point, having Bobby work into the middle was absolutely where he didn't want him, because then he could just hammer it. And we all said, Ted, we want to keep Bobby on the boards, not in the middle. He thought about it, and he said, oh, you're right. I stand corrected.
Nick, we're sitting here in the kitchen, and you're refurbishing your home, and it's nice and quiet here. I'll bet to this day you thank somebody for even being here, because you had the scare of your life. We thought you might die. You had cancer. Tell us a little bit about that and what you learned from it.
Well, it's, Joe, it was almost 11 years ago, and, I know you and I met up at Buick Open shortly after, that summer, I guess it was, and you did a very, very nice article about myself and the cancer. It changes your attitude, and everybody treats serious illness differently, and I treated mine, and I hate, kind of like a head cold. I know it was more serious than that, but I'd never really thought I was going to die. I know there was a possibility I could. I mean, a lot of people have died from cancer, and I fortunately are not one of them at this point in time. It gives you a little different perspective. Priority-wise, some things aren't as important. The game of golf isn't quite as important. When you do play, you enjoy it more. Work, I've always always enjoyed my work, always taken it seriously, which I still do, but it's not the end all. If things happen in a job where you get let go, or you for whatever reason, it's not the end of the world. You go get another job, or you just go become a beach bum, and life goes on. You don't have your health. I don't care how much money you have. You don't have your health, you can't function. So it gives you a little different perspective.